Dillon Davis with Battle Creek Enquirer has been covering that, and he's here to talk about the latest. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Richard.
Thanks for the time today. So you had an article this week, I think, that gave us a little bit of an update, but where is the process generally now?
This is something we've talked about before. We kind of talked about BC Vision on the air a couple of times,
Yep.
and right now it's something that Jennifer Bowman and myself have been following. With the Enquirer. They met on Monday, the steering committee of BC Vision. It's a 24-person committee, a lot of big players. You got your Brenda Hunts and Marie Briganti, and you got Ted Deering was there. So you just got everybody that's there. And right now what they're talking about is trying to figure out what their structure is going to look like. They're trying to answer some of the bigger questions that they've had for quite a while, which is, who are they accountable to? What metrics are they going to look at to make sure that they accomplish their goals? They set out, they have a set of 5 goals that they determined they wanted to focus on first, but they've kind of latched onto the term metrics of trying to figure out specifically, statistically, what they can do to move the needle forward in some of these goals. So the meeting Monday was more about trying to gather information, trying to, kind of, tighten up the structure of what they're trying to do and figure out who's going to be accountable to BC Vision for the long term. And for somebody who's been covering it for, since about the middle of the summer here, I think it's very welcoming to see that they're answering some of the questions that, I've had and I think a lot of other people have had for quite a while.
Well, I suppose when you talk about broad goals, it's easy to state that which is extremely broad-based. But now when you're talking about the brass tacks, that is to say, how you get to accomplishing those broad goals and talking about specifics, this is where things get a little complicated sometimes.
You're sitting in a room with John Bryant, the president of Kellogg's, and Lejeune Montgomery-Tabrone from WK Kellogg Foundation, and they're people who are used to sitting at a board table and getting their way. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not about getting their way, it's about what the community is looking for, and I think it's difficult to kind of go into a think tank sort of thing with all these people who know, a bunch of different fields, and that's what they're trying to do. I mean, they talked about determinant structure, they talked about accountability, they talked, and then they kind of gave updates on where they are. I heard you talk about the rink earlier on the, Kara Beer presented something about the rink, and Ted Deering was talking about the downtown buildings, and of course he's working with John Hart, the downtown developer, on that. So, there's a lot of positive progress, and I think Jennifer and I both came away thinking that there was probably the biggest amount of meat out of that meeting that I've heard in quite a while, and I think that was a welcoming thing for, I think for us and for them as well.
Sure, because you talk broad-based stuff for a while, and then you start to say, okay, are we getting anywhere? Your impression is we are, and so we'll talk a little bit more about that coming up in a minute. 8:15 WBCK, Dillon Davis is here from the Battle Creek Enquirer. We're talking about BC Vision. You made a remark there a few minutes ago. Questions that you've had and others have had are beginning to be answered. What are some examples of that?
I thought it was interesting. Lejeune, of course, of the Kellogg Foundation, started it, and she just wanted to know that there has been a lot of process. There's been a lot of meetings. There's been a lot of talking, and I think when you have people that, mostly a room of people who are very high-powered in their field, there's frustration. They want to move things forward. They want to move the conversation beyond conversation. You know what I mean? They want to get out and do things. She wanted to say that there is progress within the process, and so they talked about that. They try to talk about they're very close on their RFQs. They've got a series of organizations that they put out qualifications for to do some of the work they're trying to do, communications and racial equity and this sort of thing. And they've narrowed it down to a few organizations who are going to submit proposals to do the work, and you're starting to see them kind of stand on a firm ground of what they're trying to do, and for the first time you really feel like they could be in for the long haul, and Lejeune wanted to answer those questions, and I think others did too.
Well, it makes sense that if you are a doer, and as you've pointed out, the leaders in the community tend to be, you want to try and advance things. But there's probably, and tell me if I'm wrong, if you've gathered this impression as well, that there is pressure to see results.
At this point, I think the pressure is because there have been other community-led initiatives, community-driven initiatives that haven't worked out. So people, when you go and talk to people and you go knock on people's doors like they did at the start of the process, you hear, well, where have I heard this before?
Uh-huh.
And you've heard it before because it might be a lot of the same players that have been coming to your door, you know?
Uh-huh.
This one, they want to try to do it the right way. I think that they're attempting to do it that way. You know, I think time will tell whether or not that they're going to accomplish what they want to accomplish, but at least at this point, they've got a series of goals that they're trying to attach to. They're trying to determine metrics. They're trying to find the organizations that are going to accomplish some of their internal work, and they want to know what the structure is going to be for the long haul. And I think that's a very positive step.
And metrics means how they're going to arrive at the goals they have and how they're going to measure that.
Well, they've said, you know, there's you know, goals like that are very broad, like, you know, empowering parents, you know, that kind of thing. You know, how do you measure that kind of thing?
Right.
You know, but then you look at like college, you know, people that are ready for college. You look at kindergarten readiness. You're trying to figure out, you know, the workforce, you know, and they want to be able to measure this. Kara Beer had mentioned they want to figure out the amount of female and minority-led businesses in the community, and there's not numbers that are readily available to determine something like that. So, you know, a lot of it is just trying to figure out what they don't know. And, you know, Lejeune made a remark to the effect of they want to make sure that they know that every single dollar that they spent has data behind it, that they know that whether they accomplish what they want to do or not, that they knew what they were talking about before they put the money into it.
Well, and I think you touched on some of the reasons why we want to be successful, of course. But if there is a perspective that we've done this before without success, then somebody's going to be accountable if there isn't success, and even if there is.
Yeah, you know, and I think they took a step towards accountability this week. They did announce that they're going to have the steering committees meetings, and the, you know, of course the action team meetings were already open, but the steering committee meetings are going to be open to the public and to the media. You know, this was something that wasn't always the case, you know, but I don't think it was explicitly turned down. They didn't know. They hadn't really discussed the way that they're going to communicate with the news media and the general public. You know,
let's talk about what a steering committee is supposed to do. In this perspective, what do they expect these committees to do?
The steering committee, well, you just have to look at the members of it. You know, a lot of them are figureheads to their organization, or they are, you know, the lead of their organization. You know, you have Ted Deering, you have John Bryant, you have Lejeune, you have Marie, you have Kara Beer, you know, Brenda Hunt. You have a good amount of people that oversee a lot of people and a lot of finances in the community. What they're trying to do is they're trying to get together, and the steering committee will take the information that's passed up from the action teams that have met sporadically, and they want to take it and try to figure out where the best use of their time, money, and resources is going to be. You know, so these are the people that are making the decisions. They're the ones that are trying to figure it out. And then, you know, I think it's kind of, they're trying to make kind of a fluid process between the action teams and them. And I think they're getting closer to that. I don't think it's a perfect process just yet, but that's what they're trying to accomplish at this point.
All right, and in a minute we'll talk a little bit about the openness of that and what folks perhaps have been saying as they've been observing these processes. Dillon Davis is here from the Battle Creek Enquirer. We're talking about BC Vision. 3 WBCK Friday. Dillon Davis is here from the Battle Creek Enquirer. He's been covering the BC Vision process, and again, there were meetings this week that you covered, and so we've been talking about where we are in this process. Have you been hearing at all from the public? That is to say, the people who might have either viewed this positively or negatively and say, I don't know yet. What are they saying as we move forward here? Have you heard?
I think there's a good sense of people just trying to figure out if they're legitimate. I think they're trying to figure out what BC Vision is, you know, what they're going to do, how does it impact me.
Right.
You know, we had a co-chair step down this week, and we wrote about it.
Yes.
And, you know, there was a question on the thing, why is this news? You know, why does this matter? You know, and it matters because, you know, that co-chair is a city commissioner.
Right.
Who has their hands in a lot of other things in the community. And, you know, that's why we're trying to write about it. We're trying to create a sense of kind of consistency in our coverage, and, you know, in a way that, you know, it makes it so they're accountable. You know, they're accountable to the community, and that was our goal setting out and covering it. That we want to make sure that, you know, that what they're going to get done is what they said they're going to do.
Right, and certainly, if there is a community leader who has been involved in this, and most of them are, who now says, "I need to step back," you say, "Whoa, what's that about?" So it seems legitimate. And what was it about, by the way?
Oh, yeah. You know, I don't think that was Kate Flores. That was what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And Kate sent out a kind of an email blast to a lot of the people in the College of Career Readiness Action Team. That's the one of 6 that they have. And she just said that that they had started with a number of hours that they had told her. I think she said it was 6 to 7 per month. And since then the commitment's grown. It's a volunteer commitment. She's not being paid to do that.
Of course.
So it's like it's much greater. I've sat in on College of Career Readiness meetings, and that that's a very engaged group of people that have a very big set of questions ahead of them. You hear Battle Creek Public Schools and Lakeview Schools and the Calhoun County, one of the other alternative schools here in town, and people are just trying to figure out, what's going on. So, with her, I think she stepped away. It was the right time. I think she needed to take a step back from leading it, but she's still going to be a part of it.
She's become a commissioner since then, and so it was a time concern on her part, which is important, I suppose, to know for folks. But yeah, it's an interesting point that you make that some folks say, how does this affect me? Because at this stage, it may not be clear yet to the average person in town, what is this all about? And it may seem like a long distance between some folks who just wake up and go to work every day and do their thing, between them and some of these heavy hitters who are involved in this. It's not quite clear to see the path yet. Is that the sense you get?
I tell you, I look around the room when I go and cover these, and I look around like, I probably have the lowest salary in this room. So I think there are a lot of people in the community that are just like, who are these people? And I think that's the accountability factor that they're talking about. They're accountable to the community. They're trying to find the right people to get to the table to talk and answer the questions that the community wants answered. And there is a sense of indifference at times because, people have heard it all before.
Well, right.
So, I think somebody comes and wants to sell you some magic beans. You're not always sure that that's going to be a thing.
Right.
I think that's what they're trying to figure out at this point. And I think a lot of people are just kind of waiting.
Sure.
They're just waiting.
So, speaking of waiting, what are we waiting for next? What comes next? We have the holidays now, so we imagine things calm down for a little bit. But what's the expectation going forward here as we start the new year?
As I mentioned, that was I think actually I don't know if I said it, but I think it's their last steering committee meeting of the year.
Okay.
They determined a little bit of structure this week, so I think that they're going to try to meet on a more consistent basis. I think quarterly had been something that had been discussed.
And that doesn't mean that there's not work going on in between, of course.
Right,
yeah.
right. I mean, I think the next big move is for them to determine their organizations that they put out the request for qualifications for. As I mentioned, there's a few that have applied, and they're going to submit proposals, and then from that point, the steering committee will determine if that group they want them to do the work. And those are broad things.
Right.
How do you racial equity is something that a lot of organizations are looking at, but I don't know that everyone knows how to tackle.
Sure.
So I think they knew what their own limitation was. They went out and found an organization that did know how to do that, and they did that across the board. So I think that's the next big move. They're going to try to find those organizations, and then I think at some point they'll have a meeting plan for the new year of what does BC Vision in 2016 look like. It's made it through a year. What is the next plan? What is the next year? What is the next? It's kind of a month by month, day by day, trying to figure out how the work is going to be accomplished. And there are a lot of good people involved. There's a lot at stake, and I think they know that the opportunity is, it's very profound if they can do what they would like to do.
Right. Well, we'll be watching for updates from you, of course, and that is easy to find either in the old-fashioned forum, of course, or online as well. Dillon Davis, Battle Creek Enquirer. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Richard.
8:20.